Hello, here's DesignVAT's Petty Cash Expense Tracking Spreadsheet. Now this spreadsheet has two major functionalities. It enables you to track your daily expenses across multiple categories. So you can know the total amount you spend on operating expenses like your office space, utilities, internet subscription. You can also track the total amount you spend on advertising, payroll, and basically any cost you incur in the day-to-day running of your business. Now the second functionality is petty cash tracking. So in addition to tracking your daily expenses, it also helps you maintain a petty cash account. So you can be able to create an account, track your reimbursements, and know at any point in time the total cash on hand you have. So those are the two awesome features. In this video, I'm going to cover all the functionalities. So on the screen, I've opened up the template, and it's powered with Microsoft Excel. So you need to have Excel, a version from 2013, installed on your computer. Now, once you open up the template, you arrive at a dashboard, and this holds three thumbnails to navigate to the three major sections of the template. We have the expense section where you enter your daily expenses, the petty cash section where you track your petty cash reimbursements, and the report section where you can view multiple automatically generated reports. Now in this video, I'm going to cover all the sections starting with the first. Now to open up a particular section, you simply click. So clicking on the thumbnail, for instance, expense, takes us to the expense section of the template. So now we're in the daily expense information section of the template. Now all sections in this template have an identical formatting. In the upper left-hand corner, we have the section title, and this tells the user at any point in time the section you're currently on. So notice it says daily expense information, so the user knows that this is where you document all of your daily business expenses. Now what are business expenses? Basically, as a small business owner, you need to continually spend money on your business for things like advertising, salaries, utilities, transportation, and so on. So these all constitute your business expenses. A business expense is basically any cost that you incur in the day-to-day running of your business. So this section is where you document your daily expenses as at when you spend it. To the right of this, we have three buttons. To add a new business expense, to add payments to suppliers for credit purchases, to delete an existing expense. Above the three buttons here, we have our navigation pane, and this is made up of several labels. Each label represents a button to navigate to a particular section of the template. So notice the first label, dashboard. Once you click on it, it takes us back to the dashboard where we initially started. Recall we then clicked on the first button to navigate to the expense section. So the navigation pane is made up of several buttons to navigate to other sections of the template. Now below the three buttons here, we have our data table, and this is where all expenses will be listed. At the top, you notice we have our column headers. These are the attributes you're expected to supply for each expense. Now to add a new business expense, you simply click on the first button, Add Purchase, and it pops up an Excel form. So this form makes it easier for you to supply data to this table here. So instead of double clicking and manually typing into the cells, we've added a form to simplify data entry. So you simply supply values to the white portion of the form. Now before entering my first expense, there are two functionalities I need to cover. The first is expense categories. So recall earlier on in the video, I mentioned that you can define up to 10 expense categories. So by default, we've added the most common categories: advertising, car maintenance, office expenses, and so on. Later on in the video, I'm going to show you how you can delete any of the existing categories, add new categories, or modify any of the values here. So that's the first functionality. Now the second I need to cover is petty cash tracking. So recall I mentioned earlier on that the template allows you to maintain a petty cash account. So before you can add an expense, first of all, you need to have money to spend for that expense, and that's where petty cash account tracking comes in. So I'm going to cancel this form and navigate to the petty cash section. So we need to cover the petty cash before we can enter our day-to-day expenses. So to do that, I simply click on the label petty cash, and it takes me to that section of the template. So now we're in the petty cash collection section. Now a quick introduction to petty cash in case you're not familiar with the concept. A petty cash is basically a small amount of money that you set aside for minor expenses. So in the course of running your business, you're going to have to spend money on minor things. For instance, the generator might go faulty, the ink for the printer might run out. So there's some expenses that you need to cover with cash. So you can't afford to go to the bank to withdraw money. You can't afford to start writing checks. You need to cover it with cash on hand. So that's what a petty cash account basically is. It's a small amount of money that you set aside to cover these minor expenses. Now, the petty cash collection section is where you document whenever you collect money to increase your petty cash account. You will likely have a petty cash custodian, which might be your admin officer, the cashier. That's the person that will likely manage this template. So the individual is going to be the one that is in charge of the money, is going to disburse the money whenever you make expenses, and is going to add additional collection whenever that individual receives cash for the account. Now, to add a new collection, you notice at the top to the right of the label, we have two buttons: to add a new collection, to delete an existing collection. Above this, we have our navigation pane, and below the two buttons here, we have our data table where you're going to list all of your petty cash reimbursements. Now, to add a new collection, you simply click on the first button, Add Collection. So basically, you need to tell the template, when did you collect this amount of money? How much did you collect? What's the check number in case you collected it using a check from your bank? And who is the employee that is going to be in charge of this amount? So these are the 4 attributes you're expected to supply. So let's assume that on the 8th of January 2019, I'm going to backdate. I collected the sum of 20,000 with the check number 222 and the employee Rose Randall. Now the date format depends on the settings on your computer. Mine is the day, the month, and then the year. So kindly check the settings on your computer before using the template and use the format as is currently on your computer. So once you supply the 4 attributes, you simply click on Enter to tell the template that you've collected that amount of money. So you notice that the first row is automatically populated, telling us that we currently have 20,000 in our account. Now on the extreme right, you notice we have 2 formula generated fields. The first is the balance. So the template will automatically tell you at any point in time the balance you have from this amount. So as you spend money, this amount will continually reduce until it's finally depleted. Next, we have the petty cash ID. Now this is what you use to reference this amount in the expense section. So whenever you collect money, the template will automatically generate an ID made up of the date you collected it and the amounts that you collected. So this is how the template is able to track, so that at the end of the month in the report section, you can be able to see a breakdown of how this particular account, this 20,000 naira, was spent. So for each time you collect, it generates a unique ID, which you can use to track that particular collection. So that's pretty much a summary of this section. Whenever you collect money to the petty cash account, you click Add Collection, you supply the 4 fields, and then you click on Enter. So going back to the expense section, since we now have 20,000 in our account, we can afford to make expenses. So now you can go to the expense section, click on the Add Expense button, and supply values to all the fields. So let's assume that 2 days after, I spent 5,000 on Facebook ads. So the first thing I need to do is to tell the template the date, when did I spend that amount of money. Next, to move to the next field, you can make use of the tab key on your keyboard. So when you press tab, it moves you automatically to the next field for data entry. Next, you tell the template which petty cash account are you spending from. This is how the template is able to track expenses per collection. Now we currently have only 1 collection, which we just entered in the petty cash section, so only 1 is listed. If you have 20, the 20 are going to be listed here. Now once you select the particular ID, the template will automatically tell you how much you have, and if it's a positive or a negative balance. Positive means that you have cash on hand, so I currently have 20,000. You should never have a negative balance because you should not spend what you do not have. So it will always tell you at any point in time the balance you have on hand. So you know you can't spend more than 20,000. Next, I indicate the expense type, which would be advertising. The expense detail would be Facebook ads. The amount I spent, well, the quantity would be 5,000. The total is automatically calculated, multiplying the unit price and the quantity. And next, if you're getting this service on credit, you can go ahead and enter the percentage that you're paying from the 5,000. So let's assume if I'm doing this on credit, for instance, I can go ahead and enter 0, and the template will automatically tell me that I have an outstanding balance of 5. So, but later on, I'm going to cover this functionality. For now, I'm going to assume that we paid the entire 5,000. So it cost 5, we paid 5, so there's a 0 outstanding balance. For credit purchases, I'm going to cover that later on in the video when we add suppliers to our database. So right now, there are no suppliers, so I can demonstrate the credit functionality. So once I've supplied all the values here, what I'm telling the template is that I spent 5,000 from the 20,000 that I have. So once you click Enter, it's going to accept that transaction. We should see it listed on the first row. So the total cost is 5. We paid 5, so there's no outstanding balance. And if I scroll to the right, you notice that there are other fields like the petty cash bundle and the supplier name. So that's how you add your daily expenses. And the template is automatic in the sense that now that you've spent 5,000, your balance should have reduced to 15. So if I go back to my petty cash account, you notice that we now have a balance of 15,000. So this is what you collected, and this is what you currently have. So as you spend additional money, this balance will automatically reduce. Another functionality I need to point out is that the template enables you not spend more than what you have. So if I go to my add purchase to add another expense, I'm probably going to make this the 10th of January. If I select this petty cash account, you notice it tells me my balance is now 15, no longer 20. So if I attempt to spend more than that, so let's assume that I bought stationeries, total is 20,000. So if I tell the template that I'm paying this 20,000, you notice that the template is not going to accept it. It's going to tell me that I have an insufficient petty cash balance. So you can't spend more than what you have in your current petty cash account. So the petty cash account tells me I have 15, so I can't spend more than 15. So if for any reason I need to spend 20, I need to tell the template that I have 20 on hand because this is a paid transaction. So I hope that's clear. So right now the balance we have is 15, so I cannot spend more than 15. So if I go back and I modify the values that I have here, for instance, the total amount is 10, so let's assume that I'm paying only 10. You notice that now the template is going to accept it. So functionalities have been added such that you can't spend more than you have on your hand, because it's only practical. If you're going to spend more than you have, it must be a credit purchase, and so you're going to tell the template here that is an outstanding balance. So that's a summary of how the expense section works. You simply click on the add purchase button, supply all the values, and then you click on enter. The next is to add payments for credit purchases and to delete expenses. So now to cover credit purchases, I'm going to go ahead to the supplier section and add suppliers to my database. Because for you to be able to purchase on credit, it means you must have a relationship with the supplier or with the vendor. And for you to have a relationship with the vendor, you should be able to store them to your vendor section. So before you can add credit purchases, you need to have suppliers stored on your database. So right now I'm going to demonstrate how you add suppliers to the template. To do that, you simply click on the supplier label to navigate to that section of the template. So now we're in the supplier section of the template. You notice it has an identical formatting. The label tells the user this is where you enter supplier or vendor information. You have a button to delete suppliers you enter accidentally, the navigation pane at the top, and the table at the bottom to enter your suppliers. Now, because the supplier section is made up of a few columns, you manually type in, so there's no data entry form here. All you need to do is to simply double click on the field below supplier, enter the supplier's name. This is the name of the company. Once you're done entering the supplier's name, you make use of the tab key to move to the next field. Then you enter the point of contact, the phone number, the email address if you have it. If not, you can leave it blank. And lastly, the contact address. Then I'm just going to enter a random address. So now I've successfully added my first supplier. So what did I do? I simply double clicked on the first field and I typed, made use of my tab key to move to the next field, tab, 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 and then supplied all the values. You notice we have a formula generated column here. The template will automatically at any point in time tell you the total amount you owe each of your suppliers. So right now we owe Rose nothing, so it's currently 0. To add another supplier, simply double click. You write the name of the company. You make use of the tab key. Next, you add the points of contact, the phone number, the email address if you have it, and lastly, you enter the address. Now let's assume I don't have the address, so I simply leave it blank. So you simply repeat the process, adding all suppliers to your database. You double click, you type, you move to the next field. So now successfully added 2 suppliers. The first row represents the first supplier, the second row, the second supplier. Now to delete a supplier, notice we have the delete button here. You simply need to click on the supplier's name. You notice a border around the cell. Click on delete. The template is going to ask, are you sure you want to delete this supplier? And also tell you the name of the supplier. If you want to delete, you click on yes. If you don't, you click on no. So that's how you add suppliers and you delete suppliers. So now that we've added suppliers to our database, if we go back to the expense section by clicking on the label on the navigation pane, clicking on add expense, we should see the suppliers listed here. So as you add additional suppliers to the supplier section, the template will automatically update the supplier drop-down list here. So now that we have suppliers, we can enter credit transaction. So recall that the first 2 transactions we entered are paid. So they cost 5, we paid 5. It's cost 10, we paid 10. And we've spent 15 from our 20,000, so the balance in the petty cash account should just be 5,000. So this account is almost exhausted. We'll soon need to request for a new reimbursement. So going back to the expenses section, so let's assume that we're going to buy something on credit. So I click on the add purchase. The date in which I'm making the purchase, I'm going to make this the 11th of January. The petty cash account, so once you click on it, it will automatically list my balance. Now, if you're entering credit purchases, it means you're not paying, so you don't need to enter a petty cash account. So the petty cash account should be blank whenever you're entering credit purchases, because to buy something on credit means I am not paying for it now. I'm buying it now to pay at a future date. So the petty cash field should be blank. Next, you indicate the expense type. What am I buying on credits? So let's assume that I'm getting car repairs. The quantity, the amount that I'm spending, the total price is $4,000. Now, how much am I paying? So since this is on credit, I'm paying 0. So that means I have an outstanding balance of 4. Next, I need to enter the supplier. So let's assume it's Mary Random Limited. So what I'm telling the template is that on the 11th of January, I took my car to Mary Random Limited to service the oil, and this transaction is on credit, so I'm owing them $4,000. Now, if for any reason you forget and you enter a petty cash, once you click enter, the template is going to tell you that the petty cash bundle field should be blank. So in case you forget, we've already added functionalities there to prevent you from entering a petty cash set when the transaction is on credit. So since you're not paying, there needs to be no petty cash accounts. So that field needs to be blank, first of all, before you can click on enter. So now we've added the third transaction, which is a credit purchase. So you notice the category, the name, the total cost is 4. We didn't pay anything, so we have an outstanding balance of $4,000. You scroll to the right, you notice the supplier is equally listed. So we're owing Mary Random $4,000. And going back to the supplier section, we should now see $4,000 listed under Mary Random. So the outstanding balance column will tell you at any point in time the total amount that you owe your suppliers. And suppliers can equally have positive balance. So right now we're owing Rose Random $4,000. Possible that some of your suppliers you might pay up front before they offer the service, so they can equally have positive balance. If it's negative, it's in red. If it's positive, it's in black. So that's pretty much how you add outstanding balances. So whenever you're ready to pay Rose Random, you make use of the second button in the expense section. You simply click on add payments, the date in which you're making the payment. So this is equally going to be January, but let's assume that it's on the 14th of January. The supplier that you're paying. So once you click the drop-down list, it's going to list all suppliers in your database. So once you click on a supplier, it will automatically tell you how much you're owing that supplier. So notice it's a negative balance and it's $4,000. If I change this to Rose, you notice it's 0 because we have no outstanding with Rose. So going back to Mary, it tells us that we're owing Mary $4,000. Next, you need to tell the template which petty cash account are you paying the $4,000 from. And once you select a petty cash account, it will automatically tell you your balance. So you know you can't spend more than $5,000. So I can go ahead and spend 4 because 4 is less than 5. Click on enter. So what I'm telling the template now is that there's been a supplier payment of $4,000. So I've cleared off this outstanding. So going back to my supplier section, the outstanding should now be 0. So all sections in the template are interconnected. The template allows you to enter your daily business expenses, both paid and credit expenses. You can track outstandings to your supplier, and you can equally make payments when you eventually pay. So that covers the expense section. I'm just going to add another credit transaction. I'm going to go to my add purchase section. I'm equally going to backdate to January. This can be on the 15th of January. Right now we have only 1,000 now petty cash account. So it means that if I want to spend, I can't spend more than 1,000. Now it's possible that some expenses might combine 2 petty cash accounts. So let's assume that, for instance, I am paying a tax of 3,000. Now I paid the tax, but I used 1,000 from this petty cash and then 2,000 from another petty cash account. So what I need to do first of all is to add the second petty cash account. So in the petty cash section, I simply click on add collection, the date in which I collected this, which can be on the 10th of January, the amount I collected. Now usually petty cash is collected in the same installment. So what that means is that if I start with 20 each time, I'm going to keep collecting 20. That's usually the standard format. So you need to select the uniform amount that you collect when exhausted, the check number, and then the employee. So now this will automatically list all employees that you've currently used in the past. So once you select rows, it tells you the collection is added, and we should see it listed on the second row. So what we're telling the template right now is that we have two active petty cash bundles. The first bundle, we have a balance of 1,000 cash on hand. The second bundle, we haven't used from it, so we collected 20 and we still have 20 cash on hand. So in total, we have 21,000 in our pockets. Now going back to the expense section, if I'm going to add an expense now, so I'm going to exhaust the 1,000 I have here and then make use of my 20,000. So it's possible that the next expense will cut across two petty cash bundles. To do that is the same process. You simply click on Add Purchase. You enter the dates in which you're spending the money, the first bundle you use. So now we're going to exhaust the 1,000. The name of the expense, so this can be our office internet subscription. It can be, let's assume that the total cost of this renewal is 5,000. So here we're going to enter 1,000, which is what we paid. If you have a supplier, you can go ahead and enter the supplier. Click on Enter. But we're simply going to re-enter another expense for the same dates. Now using the second petty cash bundle where we indicate the balance. There we go. So now we've added our SpectraNet renewal of 5,000. So if we go back to the petty cash section, you should see that we've exhausted the first, and then the second we now have a balance of 16. So that's how you can allow an expense to cut across two petty cash bundles. So I think we've covered up the expense functionality. Simply click on Add Expense, follow the fields, click on Enter. To add payments to supplier for credit purchases, you make use of the Add Payments button. And lastly, to delete an expense, you simply select the expense category, click on Delete, and then you click on Yes. Now I'm not going to delete that, so I'm going to click on No. So that covers the expense section of the template. So we've covered the dashboard, which is where we started. We clicked on the first button. Recall we equally have a quick button here to go to the petty cash section. So we've covered the first two data entry fields. The third field, we've equally covered it, where you store all of your suppliers. Simply double click, enter the supplier name, and then tab across. Now we go to the reports section where you can view your monthly automatically generated reports. To do that, you simply click on reports and it takes you to that section of the template. So now we're in the reports section of the template. Now this spreadsheet has 8 reports represented by the 8 thumbnails on the screen. The first report is the petty cash report. And this enables you to select a particular petty cash bundle and it's going to list the breakdown of how you spent that particular bundle. So going to the expense section to better explain that report. Recall I mentioned this is where you document your business expenses on a daily basis. So later on, this section is going to have several transactions. So you're going to have several rows with several expenses that span across different petty cash bundles. So it's going to be quite difficult to better understand the information here, because it's going to have several rows and it's all going to be clustered together. So the first report enables you to select a particular bundle and it's going to list only transactions that are linked with that particular bundle. So you can be able to see how you spent a particular bundle over a period of time. So going to the reports, clicking on the first report, you notice at the top we have 3 filters. So you can filter by year, you can filter by month, and you can also filter by the petty cash bundle. Now, if you click this drop-down list here, it's going to list all petty cash bundles in your database. So right now we have only 2 in the petty cash section, and that's why only 2 is listed here. Now, the moment you select a particular petty cash bundle and click OK, at the top the template will give you a snapshot. So it's going to tell you the date in which you collected this particular amount, the check number, the employee that collected it, the amount that was collected, and the balance cash on hand. So from this snapshot, you already know that you've exhausted this particular petty cash. At the bottom, it's going to break it down. So you collected 20, you've used up the 20. This is the breakdown of the 20. And you can do this for any of your petty cash bundles. Notice if I change this to the other bundle, it will automatically update. At the top, we now have a summary for this bundle. We collected 20, we have 16. So we spent only 4, and at the bottom we can see the breakdown of the 4. So that's the advantage of this report. It enables you to select any petty cash at any point in time, and it's going to list the breakdown of how that petty cash bundle was used. Now, the advantage of this report is you can print it out on a monthly basis or as at when you exhaust the petty cash. So for instance, we've exhausted the first one. You can print out this report. You can have a file for all of your petty cash. So once you've exhausted this, you can print it out file so they can always reference it to know what you collected, when you collected it, and how you spent it. Now at the top, recall I mentioned we have 2 other filters. So you can filter by year. So for instance, if I want to see only 2019 data, and you can also filter by month. Now under the month drop-down list, we have only January, and this is because all our transactions currently fall in January. But later on, when you add additional months to the expense section, it will automatically update this with additional months. So for instance, let me just do a quick demonstration. I'm going to add an expense for the month of February. So I'm going to click on the add purchase. I'm going to make this February. The first bundle is exhausted, so I can't use it. So I go ahead and select the second bundle. The expense type, so I'm just going to also make this Instagram ads. Let's assume the ads ran for 2 days and I spent $2,000 every day, so I spent a total of 4. I equally paid the 4 up front, so there's no outstanding, and I click on enter. So now I'm telling the template that I've made an expense in the month of February of $4,000. So going back to the first report, it should automatically update. So once you select that bundle, which is the second, click OK, we should see that the balance has reduced to 12. And at the bottom, we now have 2 transactions. The first, which is in the month of January, and the second, which is in the month of February. So it has automatically updated the report. And if we click on months now, we should see January plus February. So as you keep adding additional months, January to December, it will automatically update and they will be listed here. So you can now filter by February to show only the Facebook or Instagram ads. You can filter back to January and to show only the January transaction. If you want to see for all the calendar months, you simply click on all and it's going to combine the 2 together. So that's a summary of the first report. It enables you to view a breakdown for each petty cash bundle. Now the second report, as the name says, is the expense summary chart. Now this just enables you to view month-to-month expense summary. So once you click on it, it will automatically open up that report. So it enables you to compare your spending. So it joins up or it aggregates your spending all together on a monthly basis for any year that you specify. So going back to the expense section, all our transactions are currently in 2019. So we have no 2018 data. But what this template will do is that it's going to sum up January advertising 2019, office expenses 2019. So your categories on a monthly basis per year. So going to the report section, to kickstart it, you simply just need to enter the year at the top. And once you do, the template will automatically update. Now we currently don't have surplus data, so we have only January and February. So that's why we have only 2 data points on the chart. 24 we spent in January, 4 we spent in February. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, add additional data for March up until November, and then refresh the report so that we can better appreciate the functionalities. So now you notice that we've added additional business expenses. So it spans across 5 months. We have January. If I scroll to the bottom, you notice we have February here. We have March. Scrolling to the bottom, we have April, and lastly, we have May. So I've added transactions for the first 5 calendar months. And scrolling to the right, you notice that these transactions fall across different petty cash bundles. So we have bundle 1, we have bundle 2. If I scroll to the bottom, you notice we have bundle 3, 4, and at the extreme bottom, we have 5 and 6. So this means I've added additional petty cash bundles. So if I go to my petty cash section, you notice that we now have several. And this is from January up until July 2019. I've exhausted the first 5. The remaining 2, I have 10 here, I have 20 here. So that's additional data I added so that we can better appreciate the report. So going through the report section now, if I open up the first report, you notice that the petty cash bundle is automatically updated. So if I click on 4, for instance, click on OK, you notice that this is one of the new bundles. This is the breakdown. So it will automatically update with additional bundles as that's when you add them. Going to the report section, now the second report, the month-to-month comparison. So at the top, once you enter the year, you notice that now the chart has 5 data points. We have for January 24, February, March, April, and May. Now the advantage of this chart is that you can see the trend without actually looking at the figures. So you can be able to see that you spent the most in May. This is the highest data points. And the lowest data point is in February, where you spent just 16,000. And you can see the trend. So you started average in January, you went down. There was a steady increase from February, March, April, and then a sharp increase to May, where you spent the most. So with this, you can now be able to watch what happened, why are you spending more, why do you spend so much in May, and all of that. So the chart just makes you see your data, so better understand the information you've entered here. So from here, you can't really make sense of this information. But from this report, you can already be able to see the trend, so you know when you spend the most, when you spent the least. And on the left, you have the actual figures. So you can be able to see January, the amounts, February, so on up until the last month, December. And at the bottom, the last row is the total, which sums up everything together. So in 2019, so far, you spent a total of 110. This is the breakdown, and this is the chart trend. So that's the first report, which is the month-to-month breakdown. So here it just clusters everything together across all categories, just so that you can be able to know the total amounts that you're spending on a monthly basis. And as you add additional transactions, then you get more data points on the chart. Now going back to the report, so we covered the first two. The third is just a breakdown. So what this does is it enables you filter your transactions by year and by month. So it's similar to the petty cash report. The only difference is this combines everything together regardless of the petty cash bundle. So it's possible you might just want to see a breakdown of all of your expenses on a monthly basis. So here you simply select the year. Next you select the month, and the template automatically lists the breakdown. So we can be able to see 2019 January transactions. This is the total amount we paid. This is the total expenses cost. The same way I can be able to see this for February. It will automatically update for March and for all the calendar months that I've entered transactions. So it just enables you filter for multiple months and years also. This is dynamic. Right now, all our transactions are 2019. But I'm going to quickly add an expense for 2018. Now, ignore the validity of this data. It doesn't make much sense. But just for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to add advertising, Twitter. 2 days, 3,000 per day. And we paid the entire 6,000. Okay, so I've added this in the month of November, year 2018. Now, first thing you'll notice is this template automatically sorts in the expense section in ascending order. So we just entered this transaction, but notice it's at the top because it's the oldest transaction. So that way, in case you forget to enter a transaction, you can always backdate and it will automatically sort in chronological order. So that's the first feature you notice here. Now, if we go to the reports, let me open the second report. Now, if I enter 2018 here, we should see one transaction, November. So only one data point. So that's how dynamic this report is. Depending on the year you enter here, for instance, 2019, you notice the table updates, the chart updates. If I change this to 2018, you notice the same thing. We have only one transaction in November, so only one data point. The next report, which is the expense report, you notice that here now we should see 2018. So that's how dynamic it is. If you add additional years, this filter will automatically update. And if I select 2018, and I select all, you notice that it's going to list the only transaction that I just entered, which is the advertising Twitter 6,000. And you can click all here. All is going to combine all transactions in 2018 and 2019 together. So you can see 2018 the first and then all. So the advantage of this report is you just have the flexibility to filter by year and to also filter by month, so that on a monthly basis you can print this out and file it, or you can export it as a PDF that cannot be altered. Now that's the first three, so the third report. Now we're on the fourth report, which enables you view your expenses by expense category. So recall that this groups it together. So in this report, we can see the total amount. So for instance, 2019, we spent 24,000 in January, but we really don't know how we spent this 24,000. It combines all expense categories together. So the fourth report enables you to see for a particular expense category. So once you open it up, you notice it's going to list all categories in your database. At the top, you simply enter the year. Next, you select the month from the drop-down list. For instance, January, and it will automatically list per category the total amount you spent on a monthly basis. So this way, at a glance, you already know in January you spent 5 on advertising, 4 on car repairs, and so on. And at the extreme bottom, you can be able to see the overall total. So you spent 24,000 in total in January, which is the same information you get here. So here you see the 24, but this groups it on a monthly basis. That's why it's a monthly report. This other report, which is the fourth report, will break it down for you. So this is the 24, but this is a breakdown of how you spent the 24,000. And on the right, we have a pie chart, which enables you to have a picture view of how you spent it. So from this chart, you can see the largest segment is the office expense segment, which is 41%. So you spent 41 on office expenses, which sums up to 10,000. The next is advertising, which you spent 21%, which was the 5,000. Then we have the 21%. So you spend the same proportion. Also on internet subscription, 5,000. So we have two 5,000s there. And then lastly, we spent on car repair, which is 17%. So it will automatically update this chart. And this is dynamic. So what that means is that if I add another transaction for the month of January, this chart will be automatically updated. So I'm going to add phone credit in January just to show this. So if I click on add expense, I'm going to make this January. Now ignore the validity. I'm selecting any petty cash just for demonstration purposes. phone credits. So let's say the Glow official line, and I bought 5,000. Let me just make that. How much do I have? Okay, I have 14,000 to spend, so let me spend 13. Okay, so I've entered that transaction in January. It will automatically sort it, so notice it's here. So if I go to my reports and I go to my category report, you should now see that we have a fourth category on the chart. So automatically phone credits is 13. And this is the second segment. So the largest segment here is the 35%, which is the phone credit that I just entered. So you notice that the portion of the pie is the biggest. The next is the 27%. Then we have the 14%, then we have the 13%, and then we have the 11%. So it will automatically update the chart with the respective figures that I entered. And that's just how dynamic this report is. So as you add additional transactions to the expense section, it will automatically sum it by category. And this is dynamic. So if I change this to February, you notice that it will automatically reflect for the month of February. So in February, I have only 3 categories. 7,000 is the most, which is what I spent on internet subscription. That's 44%. 5,000 on repair, 31%, and then 25% on advertising. I can change this to May. It will automatically update. So this is May. These are the 4 categories. So we have 5,000, 5,000. So the same on tax and utilities. Then we have 10 and 10. The same on rent and salaries. Okay. So we have 17% and then 33% for the 2. So this is a dynamic chart and a dynamic table. October, we have no transactions, so the chart is blank. So going to a month, we have, so for April that I just selected, you notice we have 4 data points. We have internet subscription, office space, transportation, and lastly, we have phone credit. So those are the 4 categories. So on the chart, that's why we have 4 slices. The largest slice is the office space, which is 48%, followed by the internet subscription, which is 33%, then transport, and then phone credits. So the chart is dynamic. Depending on the month you select and the data that you have in your expense section determines what's displayed here and the number of slices that you see on the chart. So that's a summary of the 4th report. So we've covered the first 4. Next, we move to the creditors list. Now, as the name says, this just enables you to view all suppliers that you owe. So it's a report that will list all suppliers with the respective amounts that you owe them. So right now, we currently owe no suppliers. So that's why it says 0. So if you go to the supplier section, you notice outstanding balance is 0. But I'm going to quickly add 2 credit transactions for the 2 suppliers. So if I go to my expense, add purchase, I'm going to use July and any petty cash bundle that I have money. Okay, so since this is credit, petty cash bundle will be blank. I'm just going to enter salary. So this can just be travel allowance. And let's see, for 10 days, and for each day there's 1,000. So that's 10,000. I haven't paid anything. And I'm just going to click the supplier name. So click on enter. And so if we go to the supplier section, we should have 1 outstanding balance. I'm going to do the same. Now, ignore the validity of this data. It doesn't make any sense. I'm just entering this just to demonstrate the report functionality. I'm equally going to make this, which category haven't we used? Let me see. Okay, let's see transportation. Let's see taxi to post office or delivery. 1, let's assume that costs 6,000. And we haven't paid anything, so we're owing 6,000 to Mary. So once I click on enter, we should have 2 credit transactions. There we go, Rose and Mary, and they're both on the outstanding balance. So going to the supplier section, we should see red on the 2 rows. So now if I click on the 5th report, we should see the 2 suppliers listed. So this report just shows you at any point in time all suppliers that you owe money and how much you owe them. So at this point, you know that you owe a total of 16,000. This is the breakdown, 2 suppliers. Now the 6th report, this enables you to get a summary per supplier. So later on, if you use suppliers frequently, you might want to see a breakdown of all past transactions with a particular supplier. So all you need to do is here, select the supplier name, for instance, Mary, click on OK. At the top is going to give you a quick summary, the phone number of the supplier, the point of contact, the email, and if you owe any amount. And at the bottom is going to list the breakdown of all transactions you've had with that supplier. You can equally filter by year and by month. If I change this to the other supplier rows, notice the value at the top automatically updates. This is the phone, contact, email, and residential or contact address. This is how much you owe Rose, and this is the transaction that caused that outstanding. And you can filter by year and by month. So this just enables you to select any supplier. It will list contact information at the top and then expense transactions at the bottom. This can also be printed and exported as a PDF. Next, we have the daily petty cash summary. Now, it's usually necessary to have a day-to-day report. So that means that you can select any time frame. So for the selected time frame, so the start date and the end date that you enter, it will tell you the opening balance as at the start date, the closing balance as at the end date, the total amount you collected within the time frame, and the total amount you spent within the time frame. So let's use the 1st of March, that's 0103, and the 1st of April. So what we're telling the template is I want to see a breakdown, so a daily report from the 1st of March 2019 to the 1st of April 2019. So that's 1 month. Now within this period, it tells me I collected a total of 20,000 and I spent a total of 20,000. My opening balance as at the 1st of May was 20, my closing balance was 20. Now if you want to see a breakdown, you simply click the refresh button to the right and it's going to list the daily report. So it tells me I started with 20. So on the 1st of March, nothing came in, nothing went out, so I ended with 20. On the 2nd of March, nothing came in, but I spent 3,000, so I ended with 17. 17 continued up until the 8th of March. Nothing came in, but I spent 14, leaving me with a balance of 3. So it tells you the breakdown so you can see how the money was spent. Then on the 11th, 20 came in, 20 went out, giving you a balance of 21. You had that 21 up until the 1st of April, where nothing went in, but you spent 1,000, giving you a balance of 20. So that's why you closed with 20 and you opened, as they said, with 20. So this is the daily breakdown. And you can do this for any time frame. So if I just want to see, for instance, from the 1st of March to the 7th or the 20th of March, I simply enter 1st 20. You notice the values have updated. Click on refresh. And it's going to start on the 1st up until the 20th. You can do this for any time frame. You can even do it for a single day. So you just want to know transactions that happened in or on March 1st. You can just click refresh and it's going to show you only for 1 day. Okay, so that's how dynamic the template is. You enter the start and the end dates and it's going to list a breakdown for the period that you enter. Now you can enter any time frame, but the longer the time frame, the more rows you're going to have. Because this now is going to show me for March, April, May, up until November. So that's a lot of transactions. So a summary value for every day. For each day, it's going to tell you what came in, what went out, the closing balance at the end of the day. So that's the daily report for you. And you can do this for any time frame. So this doesn't care the petty cash bundle, the expense category, just sums it up on a daily basis and just tells you the total amount that came in on that day, that went out on that day, and what you're supposed to have cash on hand in your account across all petty cash bundles. So that's the 4th report. On the 2nd row, the 3rd report. Now the last report is the expense statement, and I already opened this earlier on. Pretty much this just enables you view a month-to-month comparison stacked side by side. So you have 3 types of reports. You have the annual, the quarter, and the monthly. The annual shows you the 12 calendar months, so January up until December 2019. The quarterly shows you the first 3 quarters, so that's from January to March, then to June, then to September, then to December. So quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. And it's going to sum up the values across each expense category on a quarterly basis. And the monthly report just shows you for the current month. So we're currently in November. So to show you for the month ended in November. So only November transactions. We haven't spent anything, so it's all 0. So if you want only for the current month, you select monthly. This is dynamic, where in November is going to show November. Next month is going to show December. If you want to see for all 12 calendar months, you click on annual. Click on refresh and it's going to do the breakdown for the month of January, February, March up until December, and it's equally going to break it down across categories, so you know the total amount you spent advertising. You can compare January was 5, February was 4, so there was a decline. To repair your car, January was 4, February was 5. So you can be able to compare on for each category, January, February, March up until December. So that way you can know if you're spending more, you're spending less, which months you spent more. And at the bottom we have the total. So the total expense in January, February, March, up until December. You can do the same for quarter. So once you select a quarter there, click on refresh. It tells you this is showing for quarter 1 to quarter 4, 2019. And for each quarter, you can be able to see the amount you spent. So you can compare your spending across quarters, which is a very useful feature. And lastly, you can see for the entire months. So that's a summary of all the functionalities of the expense template. It enables you to track your daily business expenses, your petty cash accounts, suppliers, credit and pay transactions, and then generate 8 reports. Thanks and do take care.